Howdy, y'all.
Welcome back to the Grace Prep Podcast. My name is Joshua Young.
I'm Hattie Lord.
And I'm Mrs. Pryor.
Mrs. Pryor, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We're so excited to have you. This is going to be a great conversation.
Let's hope so.
Oh, no, it's definitely going to be a good conversation. I feel like an appropriate place to start would be the school. Like, how did you and why did you start Grace Preparatory Academy?
How did you come up with that to start with the school?
Yeah.
How? Against my will, we started the school. There were a number of us leaving a previous place where I had taught, and I had a fellow teacher who would meet me in the hallway and say, "We just need to start a school." And I would say, "Get behind me, Satan." Literally said it to her numerous times because I wasn't going to start a school. That was, because I knew it was a lot of work, like so much work. And I said, "I'm not doing that. I'm not." And then it really wasn't my idea. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do the next year because we were leaving where we were and didn't know what was coming next. And I'd been praying about it. And I got a phone call. My husband was driving. I was in the car. I got a phone call from Debbie Jenkins, who was a mom of a junior boy going into his senior year that next year. And she said, "Hey, there are 5 of us at Two Rivers." Imagine that. Who want to talk to you, and we have a proposition for you. And my husband said, "Don't you dare say yes to anything." And I said, "Don't worry, I'm not. And so I got there, and they said, "We want to hire you to teach our boys." It was all boys at the time. "And we want to hire you to teach our boys English in their final year of school. They want to stay together." And so I said, "Y'all are crazy." And I said, "You can't." They said, we want to pay you what you were making," which wasn't a lot of money, but they wanted to pay me what I was making at the previous place. And I said, "Y'all are nuts because there are only 5 of you." And they said, "No, there are others behind us." And so it turned out there were 6 more. So 11 total seniors. And our mantra was, when I finally said yes, our mantra was, yes. Yeah, I did. Well, I mean, here we are.
Yes.
But yeah. I did ultimately say yes. And so our mantra was 1 year and we're shutting it down. And we said it exactly that way. 1 year and we're shutting it down. We are not doing this more than 1 year. We're just going to graduate these senior boys and then we're going to go about our business and see you later. And so 1 year and we're shutting it down. And then we had a couple of juniors show up. And they said, "Hey, we heard y'all are going to do something. Can we get in on that?" And so we talked about it, and we said, okay, because one of the junior boys came with 2 retired navigator Air Force pilots who could teach all kinds of things. So they... if they came on board, we had John Howerton, who was going to do all the social studies we needed. We had me doing all of the language arts that we needed. We had then now these 2 parents who were pretty much all in, the one who kept saying we need to start a school. And so she could teach all the upper level maths and sciences. Her husband could teach chemistry and biology and Spanish. And so we said, okay, you juniors can come in and maybe we'll just do a 2-year thing. And then we had some sophomores come and say, "We want in." And then we said, we're doing a school. Guess we better get our act together. So that was in May. And
May of when?
2009.
Wow.
And May is not a ton of time to prepare.
Not a ton of time to start a school. We didn't have a building. We didn't have anywhere to meet. And without getting into too much detail about it, because, I can't possibly be bitter about it. So much good has come out of it all. But we had someone on the previous school's board who would call churches in the area and tell them that we were rebellious and we were evil and we were going to bring evil to their places if they let us meet there. So he was making phone calls all around town to keep us from being able to have a place to meet. And so every church we went to, they sat us down for about a 40 minute to hour long sermon about reconciliation and forgiveness. And then they would tell us that we couldn't meet in their church as a school. So it was,
Wow.
it was, we thought maybe we'll meet around my pool in the backyard.
What? Nah.
I'll teach English there. It'll be like a progressive dinner, progressive school. You go from one house to the next, this teacher's house to this teacher's house. And we didn't know. And finally, we had a woman who just was a prayer warrior, and she found us a place. And so we ended up over off of Klein Road. And so we started out there. But we met every Monday night during the summer and hashed out all the things. What are our school colors? What is our mascot? What is our mission statement? What is our motto? What is our vision? What's our philosophy of education? What courses are we going to do? What's our schedule? Which was pretty simple in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's what we did.
Was that a fun process? Or just arduous?
Oh, man. It was great. I mean, we were bonded. We were a team. We loved each other. It was parents and the four of us who were teaching, and we had a great time together, and we really love each other in the Lord. But it was a hard process to go through all that and to figure it out in a summer and plan, prep all the things and figure out how to move into the space we were going to be in. All of that. It was pretty much a nightmare in the beginning.
And so that was all in 2009.
It was all in 2009.
Oh,
so our first year, and we built our school backwards. Most people start with preschool, and then they add a grade after that. We started with senior students and worked our way backwards. And so it was just freshmen through seniors. And like I said last night at our little extravaganza, I said we started in 2009 with 22 students, and 11 of those were seniors. So then we didn't have much of a school the next year. So it was a crazy thing trying to figure out how do we actually grow this thing, and what are we anyway, because we weren't what we thought we were going to be. We thought we'd be a 5-day-a-week school. We thought people would come full time, and then we realized, no, it's really more for homeschooler people at that point, and then we've worked our way into a full-time thing.
Yeah.
So what did it start off as?
It was a 5-day that first year, and then the next year we went to 2 days per class. So we went to the block schedule the next year, which was fun, trying to figure out how to teach all we do in a 2-day-a-week
So
thing.
fun.
Yeah, it was an interesting process.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
When you were in the process of making, the school, were you ever concerned about, like, will this actually happen?
Oh,
yeah. Like, what?
Absolutely.
What did you think was going to happen if it didn't work out? Or you like, okay, well, I've invested too much time and money into this. No.
No.
You were fine. Okay.
I was like, I would just do something else.
Okay.
I mean, it's God.
Mm-hmm.
So you just say, okay, either God wants this to happen or he doesn't want it to happen. And so I knew that if it didn't continue, I didn't want to leave people in the lurch. I didn't want freshmen and sophomores who had signed up to not have something to come to. So going into the second year, I knew that the other teacher, John, needed his pay to continue. And so I didn't take a salary, because I said if I take a salary, it's going to kill the school. So we could charge less. We moved into to First Baptist. They allowed us to come over and work in their building, and so they charged us hardly anything at all. It was very, very low rent. And so between that and the salary paid to the other teacher, it was there was no money left for me. Mm-hmm. So I said, I believe in this really strongly. I believe that it's going to happen. And my husband would say, is this just like you're just playing around, or is this a real thing? Is this going to happen? I go, no, I feel it. God is doing something. I just don't know exactly what it's going to be, but just hang in there. We're going to be fine. And he would say, yep, I know, we're going to be fine. So just do your thing. And so for the next 2 years, I didn't take a salary. And then the year after that, I think I got paid like $200 a month.
Okay.
So second, third, fourth year in, I finally took home,
a salary.
a little,
Okay.
if you can call it that.
It's a little bit of
Coffee money.
Yeah, exactly.
If only I drank coffee, it would have been coffee money.
Yeah, that's worse.
It was chai tea latte money. Yeah.
Yeah. What brought this building that we're in currently to? How did you get to this point?
Wow, that's So we were at First Baptist. We were outgrowing their space. They were growing their kids' academy. We were outgrowing the space that they were giving us. And we were rolling our stuff in every day. We had a room that they had given us that we could keep some equipment in. So we had a copier. I don't know what other equipment we had at the time, not much. But we had a little room where we could put a few things in there and a little bit of a closet space. And so we were rolling everything in, rolling everything out, and we sat down with the pastor over there, and he was saying, hey, I think you have probably about 2 more years here at this building, and then you're going to need to be in something. So for 2 solid years, my husband would call me and say, want to go on a date tonight? And that meant we were going to go look at property or a building. And so we would go pretty much every week to look at properties here in town, just land, straight up land, or something with a decrepit old building that nobody wanted, something that would have been too small for us by this point, and we would have never survived in any of the things we looked at. One was a giant warehouse. It would have cost us huge amounts of money to convert it. So we would just every week we'd go out and look at least 2 or 3 buildings, and he'd say, "Want to go on a date?"
Wow.
I say, "What building?
Yeah.
What's the building?"
How romantic.
Yeah, it was so romantic. And then we had looked at this, and my husband thought that it didn't look like people were really doing much of anything here. And so he had written them a letter asking if they were going to sell, and they said no. And then one of our moms said, hey, I think I know of a building that might come up for sale, and it actually was this building. And so the owner of this building, she and I knew each other because our daughters had played basketball together. And so when we found out that she really was going to sell this building, she was about 2 weeks from signing a contract with someone else to buy her school and the building. And we stepped in, and she said, I don't want to sell to them. I want to sell to you. And so she said, let me check. Let me make sure it's legal. They hadn't signed anything yet. Some emergency had called them away out of country, and that's when we swooped in. And God, it was just God. Mm-hmm. And so lots of little coincidence things that happened to make her know this was the right thing and to sell it to us. And so she did. And when we first heard about it, I said, oh my gosh, we can't afford that building. What in the world? And then I started crunching numbers, and I realized, oh, we can make it happen. I think we actually can survive.
Wow.
Yeah. But then we had to renovate, and I would call my husband every week. I would, throughout the summer, we renovated. And this was a hallway where we're sitting right now. You're in the hallway.
Oh.
And I'm in a little tiny room.
We are in
You're in the hallway where you are in this in the room B4. You're in what used to be a hallway, and those are closets over there. And this was a room with a sliding barn door. So I'm in a little room, and you're in the hallway where you are. So we ripped out walls. We expanded rooms, we tore down walls, we added walls, we did all kinds of things to it. And I would call my husband every week, and I would say, I need $7,000 by Friday.
Oh my God.
Go.
Wow.
And he would get me $7,000, and I would pay the people. And then the next week I would say, I need $12,000 this week. And he would get me $12,000, and we would put it into the building, and we kept doing it every week. And I cried probably every day. Wow. It was so stressful. But I knew that God was doing this thing. I knew that it was a God thing and that it was meant to be, and felt very strongly about that. And he did too. We both knew. We were both all in. But when we bought the building, we had just closed on it, and the woman that called me, Debbie Jenkins, right? She had gone her way. She was doing her thing. We were doing our thing. School was still happening. And we were headed into Granzines downtown to go have a board meeting for the school. And she was coming out of Granzines. And I said, hey, I just want you to know we just closed on a building today. It's so amazing, but it's got to be renovated. And I don't know how to do that. And she said, hey, I'm a general contractor now in town, and we renovate apartments and complexes, condos, all kinds of buildings, and I have a crew, and I can send a crew your way. And so they just charged us for the cost of the materials and their labor, and that was...
That's amazing.
It's
amazing.
God.
Yeah.
Like, it's just God. So it was a big faith walk getting to this point.
So I had a conversation with you just the other day, and we're talking about expanding, and now you're planning, I think you told me like by 2025
We got to have another
you
building.
have to have
We have
another
to
building.
add to this. We have to
Yeah.
add to this in some way. Not,
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody wants to pay us $10 million for this piece of property, we will happily pack up
Happily accept.
and build something somewhere
Mhm.
else. But
Mhm.
it'd have to be a lot of money because things are so expensive here. But yeah, we're going to have to add. We don't have enough rooms for what we're going to have in 2025.
So you do want to grow the school.
Yeah.
That means hiring more teachers, right?
Yeah.
Wow,
It
that's a big
does.
process.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your ideal size for Grace Prep, like in students?
Probably a couple hundred.
Okay.
We're at about 160.
Yeah. So not
and
too
I
much
think
bigger.
not too much bigger. I don't want to be huge, but I do want to take in, as many students as we feel like the Lord is sending us. We're not always the right fit for people. We don't always do what they need,
Yeah.
offer the things they need.
Yeah. So, how much longer do you think Grace Prep will last? Is there somebody who's going to take
When
your
is Jesus
position?
coming back?
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So, I wanted to talk to you about like, what does Grace Prep look like after you're no longer a part of Grace Prep? Like,
Yeah. I heard you say in one of the recordings you sent me that you hope that this will go on after you're gone.
mm-hmm.
And that's what I hope too, that this will
Okay.
just go on. It won't look the same because somebody else will do different things and God will do a new thing
Mm-hmm.
with whoever comes on board.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that person show up yet, so it must not be time yet
Okay.
because
Okay.
God will send them when it's time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much longer I'll be here doing what I'm doing, but I'm doing it now and going to keep doing it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a very faithful way to look at it. But I think that's what this
Yeah.
school is built on.
Yeah. Right. It's when you go into AP language, you'll have to read, your summer reading will be Your God is Too Safe. And you will know what it means to be in the holy wild once you read that. And you are sitting in my holy wild right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I loved that term. Like you used it at graduation. I've never heard holy wild before. But
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You're a school teacher, you're a principal. You obviously believe in the school system. But is there a problem with the modern school system? You're like, this should probably change. Like, this isn't helping anybody right now. And like,
You want me to go there?
is there? Yes, I do.
Is
I do.
there?
Are we being controversial
Yeah,
here?
because it's like there are some students who are like, school provides nothing except like logical thinking. Like, why doesn't it teach us taxes or how to start our own business? And you have to go pay money to learn how to do those things or have loads of experience
Yeah.
to be self-taught.
Right.
So, what's your take on that?
Well, you're talking about public school. What's wrong with the system? They're
Okay.
trying to do too many things that aren't going to help students to learn and to think critically. They're
Okay.
feeding them information. They're telling them what to think. When you talk about diversity in a public school setting, you're talking about we all look different, but we all think the same, and you got to line up with the thinking. And that's not really diversity. Diversity is we might look different and we might look the same, but we all think different things and we come at things from a different point of view. But quit trying to teach that thing and just really get down to teaching really solid math and English skills. Because I think students are coming out of schools now without that. And there are pockets of places that are great, and I know teachers that are great and they really care and they work very hard, but I think the system is against them because of what the system is requiring of them.
Yeah.
And so I would say get out of your own way and just teach what is basic and what is necessary. And here, because we're 2 days a week, we don't do the fluff. There's no time for fluff. You just start hitting those basic things and really trying to educate. But what we're also trying to do is get you to where you are thinking critically. I mean, poetry. What are you going to do with poetry when you're older if you're not a poet? But you're learning to think critically, and you're learning to think critically quickly.
Yeah.
And you're learning to understand what people are saying, how they're saying it, why they're saying it. And so that's what I think really needs to be focused on instead of all of the other things that come in the way of doing that.
So you said public schools sometimes teach fluff, like, or a lot of the time. Why do they teach fluff? What's the reasoning behind
Well,
that?
it's political. I mean,
Okay.
it's a liberal ideology.
Okay.
Yeah, you just wanted me to
So,
go there, didn't
Yeah, well, a little
Yeah.
bit, because I did a
Yeah.
report for history on child labor, and the man who is known to create the school system is John D. Rockefeller, and I have a quote from him saying, Rockefeller created the modern American school system primarily to, quote, provide trained and obedient workers to fuel America's
Yeah.
expanding industrial economy.
Yeah. It was all to fuel industry. It was all to have factory workers.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
it's
give
right
them-
in the crux of the Industrial
Mhm.
Yeah.
Revolution.
Yeah.
Give them enough education that they can survive and that they can come and work in our factories. But he needed worker bees. He
Yeah.
didn't need other people. He didn't need chiefs. He needed just the Indians. Is that
Yeah.
too controversial to say it that way?
No.
So
He
what do
needed
you
the people
desire
who
for
were-
your students?
Oh, I want them all to know that God has a design for their lives. I want them to know that God has given them gifts and talents. And they might not show up on a test in a class. It might not show up in a math class or a science class or an English class. But everybody here has gifts and talents that the Lord has given them. And He has designed them to be creative, to be creators, because we're made in His image and He's a creative God. And so I think you have to, I listen to the John theme, can't be afraid of failure. You have to really
So good.
embrace the ability
So
to
good.
fail, because you're going to. You can't get through this life without having failed at something. I've failed at things, and so you just move on from there. When you said, well, what if the school hadn't worked out? Well, then I just would have done something else, because where I was failed for a number of us.
Yeah.
That it failed us. And so I did a new thing, and this became the new thing. What if this failed? Well, then we would all do a new thing. And so you just go from one new thing to the next new thing.
Yeah.
So how did you become a teacher?
Oh, it's in my blood.
Well, you've talked about that before. You can't turn it off.
yeah. So great-great-grandfather, great-grandfather, grandfather were all Lutheran ministers, all preachers. And my grandmother was a teacher alongside my pastor grandfather. I never knew him. Both of my grandfathers died before I was ever aware. One died really early, right after my mother graduated from college. And the other one died when I was about 3 months old. And so I didn't know them, but the one grandmother was a teacher. My mother was a classically trained pianist, performer, but she also taught at colleges, and she taught piano in our home. And so it's a gene. I had an uncle who worked for General Dynamics for 27 years, I think, and then he became a professor. But at General Dynamics, he worked in what was his office was in a bank vault, and he designed the ground avoidance radar for the F-111 so that they could fly low to the ground and not hit structures on the ground. So that was his job at General Dynamics, was to do that kind of thing. My father was the Exxon's expert in a number of product lines in the world globally. So he would travel and teach companies how to use the products that were coming out. He designed processing towers to process oils in a different way. So he has patents, but they belong to Exxon. So he was doing that kind of thing, but teaching as well. My mother was teaching. I mean,
What else would
you
you
can
have
ask
done?
my family. I'm always teaching. I can't shut that gene off, as much as they would love it if I would stop teaching every
Yeah.
now and then at home. But, it's there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of got away from it for a while, but it's just a thing. You either are.
How did you
Yeah.
get away from it?
Well, I mean, I didn't totally get away from it, but I had 2 kids and I stayed at home for a
Yeah.
long time.
Okay.
When did you have your daughters?
When?
Yeah, or I mean, how old
I
were
was-
you?
Okay.
I don't know.
So,
Remember, Hattie, she's like 500.
I'm 521. So yeah. I was a little older when I had them, because my husband and I waited quite a while. When we first got married, he was stationed in Germany. He was sent to Germany, and so we ended up there and just traveled as much as we could. Came back, lived in Las Vegas, and that's when we had our first daughter. Was when we were in Las Vegas. So it was about 8 years into our marriage when we had our first child. And I had her in July, end of July, in Las Vegas when it got to be 116 degrees that year. So
Wow,
that
lovely
was
walks with the baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
How nice. And
Yeah,
stroller.
yeah. It cools off in the evenings. It's a dry
Around
heat.
midnight.
You don't spontaneously combust, even if you think you're going to.
I don't know about that. I might. I might
Yeah.
just start cooking, bro.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then we moved back here. My parents were older, and so we wanted to come back. My husband got out of the Air Force, and we came back here, and so we could be close to them, and because we wanted them to know their grandkids and our grandkids to know them. So we came back to the area.
Okay. So were they still in? Where did you grow up?
I grew up
like
in Baytown, right
Baytown.
outside of
Okay,
Houston.
That's what it is.
It was Exxon, huge refinery, largest refinery in what we called the free world at that time, because there was an Iron Curtain when I was growing up. It was, Soviet Union,
Yeah.
Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
And so there was a larger refinery over there somewhere, but our second largest in the world.
So you came back to around Baytown, or came to New Braunfels?
We came to New Braunfels. My
Okay.
parents had already bought property here and built a house here.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You said teaching has always been like part of your life, and then you wrote a book literally teaching how to write English.
Yeah,
right?
I wrote two. So
Oh,
one
two,
AP
okay.
Literature, succeeding on the AP Literature exam, succeeding on the AP Language exam. And so I wrote those 2 successive summers and tried to put into it basically everything I say in class so
Mhm.
that a student, if they're being homeschooled, could be self-guided, or a parent could read sort of scripted material and guide them through
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
so I did that. And so that was trying to figure out, what do I say and when do I say it and how do I put that into a readable form where someone can understand what it is I
Yeah.
do.
What inspired you to write a book?
I go into a lot of IEW, Institute for Excellence in Writing conferences, quite a few actually. I went to 3 or 4 in the area. And Andrew Pudwa, who founded IEW, would always be doing those conferences. And I would sit, in the front, because I'm a front row sitter if I'm doing my thing.
You're one of those people.
I'm one of those people.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, how would you think I wouldn't be one of those
Exactly.
people?
Sure,
I'm
sure.
one
No,
of
she sits in the
those.
back.
Back
Miss
row.
Pryor sits in the
I
back.
slump, I slouch in, and I sit in the back, and I put my head down on the table. No. So he would ask questions, and there's several of us answering. It's not just me. I didn't take over because I'm very careful about trying not to take over when I'm sitting in somebody else's class, because I don't want to be that person who's doing all the talking. So he would ask questions, and then on breaks he would come over and he would say, "So what is it that you actually are doing? What are you doing?" And so I told him, we had private school, small private school. I had homeschooled my daughter for a year, but private school. And I was teaching AP English. He said, "Tell me about AP, because I don't know anything about AP English." And so I told him some things about it. And then he said, "Hey, would you like to write a book?" And I said, "I would love to write a book." That was before I started writing one.
Oh, snap.
And trying to figure out. So they contacted me, his people got with my people, which was me. I didn't have people.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they contacted me, and I was at another conference. I was at one in Galveston, and I was at this conference, and they contacted me while I was in the hotel and said, "Okay," so that was June 1st probably. And they said, "Okay, so we want you to write this. Here's the format, and your first 25% of the book is due." Let me get it right. Your first 25% of the book is due by June 21st. It's June 1st, and I'm in a hotel. And 25% of the book is due in 20 days. And so I started typing away, and I went crazy writing. I would get up at 5. I would eat a little something. I would get in my little office at home, and I would turn on a sound machine so I couldn't hear all the stuff going on outside the sound machine. I would come out to, eat, stretch a little bit, go back in, and I would go to bed about 11 o'clock at night. And I did that for an entire summer. and had a big meltdown in the middle of the summer and thought, I can't. And God said, yeah, you can. And so I got back in there and did it and finished the book. And then they said, okay, so now you did the literature one. What about the language one? And so
And you said, no!
I cried and I said, okay. And then, so I got both of those published, and they're now obsolete because AP changed the whole structure of the course. So all the work, I mean, some of the things that I do, I've given you all handouts from those books.
Oh,
really?
really?
What? That's
Yeah.
so
That's
cool.
cool. I mean, I
Yeah,
knew
those are-
they were yours.
Those are
but
handouts. Yeah,
that's
I
cool.
created, well, I had to create everything that went into the book. It had to be mine. So the PAT statement is mine.
Okay.
All
Wait,
the
so you
things.
created the PAT statement?
I've created the PAT statement. I mean, there are other statements similar to that, but I created that
That's
thing
really
that
cool.
we call the PAT statement.
Okay.
And so I had to create my own stuff because it couldn't be plagiarized. I couldn't just
Mhm.
be taking other people's stuff and sticking it in there.
Yeah.
So I had to create everything as I went along, which
Yeah.
was pretty interesting, painful,
Um,
but fun at the same time.
Can we go back to talking about the school system? Because
Yeah, sure.
you're.
I was in the
principal.
public school system
Yeah.
in Las Vegas. I
And-
taught in the public school.
Yeah, and I want to pick your brain about the whole public school
Okay,
type
sure.
of stuff
Yeah, yeah.
because there's information everywhere saying public school is good, like you'll learn
Yeah.
this, but then there's also information saying school is pointless, don't go to college, do your own thing. So I believe you said the basics are math and
Reading.
English. Reading.
Yeah,
Okay.
reading and writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why those three?
Well, I mean, it's the foundation for everything else you do.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to learn anything about science, you really need to be able to read with depth. You need to be able to write things out as you're reading. You need to be able to function in society in that way. You're always going to be writing. No matter what job you take, you're going to be writing something somewhere to somebody.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to be doing that clearly, expressing yourself clearly. Reading anything, to get more knowledge, I think that's really super important to be able to read with depth and not just read surface material. Of course, math. Everybody does math. People think they're not going to do math. You're going to do math. Math is your friend. You should embrace math. You might not like it, but you need to know how to do it. So I feel like that's the basics. And if we got back to doing the basics, that would be so helpful for people. We have a course here, the business math course, where you do learn things like balancing a checking account. I know she's doing some things like that in there. Used to start your own business. That used to be a thing that they did. I don't think they're doing that anymore, but that was a thing because we felt like it was important to teach people life skills in that way. But college isn't for every single person. And I've told people I don't think that college is always the answer, but I want you to be prepared in case you want that as an option.
Yeah.
I want this school to give you the option, even if you came in here thinking maybe college isn't an option for me. I want you to think that after you graduate here, it could be an option for you. But you get to choose. Do I want to go? It's super expensive. People come out in debt. It's not great to have that experience that you come out of a college and you now owe so much money you don't know how you're going to make ends meet. But to do it in a smart way, where maybe junior college, you transfer into something else, or you get a scholarship because you've done well at something. But it's not everybody's everything. And so we need people who are going to learn how to be diesel mechanics. I have a former student who works on my cars now. He's got his own little business. And I have a problem with my car. I take it to him because he knows what he's doing. And I can trust him.
I feel like, especially in our world today, I look at so many kids of like Gen Z, and it's almost like they're barely getting through life. And most of those kids have gone through the public school system, and they don't have much drive, and they don't have much faith in themselves, and they're kind of just like, it would be better if I wasn't even alive.
Well, without a vision, the people perish.
Exactly. And so I want to touch on, like, what is the public school doing?
Yeah.
Because all of them are coming from public school. I mean, some of them are coming from a private school, but that's other factors causing that. Should there be something that changes that, or is that just something that will always be happening?
Well, we need revival. We took the Bible out. We took prayer out in 1963, I think it was. And so then when you take God out of the school and you say it's illegal to talk about God and your relationship with God as a teacher, then you really do harm to people, because where does our vision really come from? I mean, it's not just within you. It is the Holy Spirit within you that gives you that creativity, that is part of that image of God being the creator that we said a few minutes ago. It is about having something bigger than yourself, because if this is all there is, why would you care? If this is all you ever got in life, then why would you care? But if you know that there's a God, and you know that he loves you, and you know he has a plan for your life, then you're striving for that thing. And I just don't believe in coddling. I am not a coddler. I don't know if y'all have figured that out yet or not, but I'm not a coddler. Don't come to me and give me your sob story about I had a busy weekend so I couldn't get my thing done. Because I had a busy weekend too, and I'm still getting my stuff done. And I've been doing it for a long time. 521 years is a long time to be getting my stuff done. So I long time ago, I read a book called Raising Self-Reliant Children in a Self-Indulgent World. And I use that with my kids. I use that in school. I use that with students. I use that with people. I meet some of the things that are in there, raising self-reliant children in a self-indulgent world. And way back when I read that, it was already a self-indulgent world. And it's just gotten worse.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't feel like doing it, well, no, just don't. Like, if you want to just scroll through your phone on TikTok all day, just do that. Like, why should you have to get up out of your bed? Why should you have to make your bed? Why should you have to do anything at all? Why should you have to do chores? Why should you have to do anything that's productive? And so I think the world has said, well, you don't have to. Just lie around and do nothing.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is the world saying that?
Because they don't have God, because they don't have Jesus, because they don't have a vision, because they don't have anything bigger than themselves. They think this is all there is. And it has been a system of indoctrination, so that now the people going into the system have come through the system, and they believe it.
Yep.
You look at the pro-Palestinian protesters. Women are out there protesting on behalf of Hamas. Hello, women. What in the world? Do you know that you are going to lose every right you have if Hamas takes over control? Do you know what they will do? Do you know what they do to women? But you're out there just blindly protesting for them because on TikTok it's saying that Israel is evil and the Palestinians are good. And there are good people who are Palestinian people, but there's Hamas who wants to control it. And so you think that you're going to survive that if they take over? No. So it's an indoctrination system. It's been that way for decades now. 60s. It's been that way since the 60s.
So was it ever a question for you to include like faith in God in teaching?
Never a question. Never a question. No, I did. I did that with my own kids. I did that when I started teaching at the other school after we moved here. I did that here. That's my whole thing.
How was that in public school whenever you were teaching in Las Vegas?
That was a tricky one, because really in the school where I taught, there were a lot of Mormons in the school. They had a faith, but they don't have the faith. They don't have the right faith. But they were faith-filled people and wanted to teach faith. But at that point, it was getting to be where you could put up a celebration of any kind other than Christian. You could not put up a Jesus manger scene for Christmas. You could celebrate Christmas in any other way you wanted to. I don't think Kwanzaa had been invented yet, because it just got invented not terribly long ago. But you could put up other religious symbols from other religions. You could put up something that was Buddhist. You could put a Buddha on a wall, but you couldn't put anything about Jesus on a wall. But you could have a Bible on your desk. I mean, you could pray in your classroom. I would go around to the desks and pray over the desks before the kids would get there,
Wow.
and pray for the students
Wow.
before they arrived.
What age did you teach then?
I was a classroom reduction teacher for first grade when I first came out of college. That was when I had just graduated, and I got hired in the Nevada school district, Clark County ISD, and so they had 32 kids in a first grade classroom, and so what they did was hire a second teacher for that classroom, and so there were 2 of us, so they could say their ratio was 16-1, but we were never really in the room together. It was really still 32 kids with 1 teacher.
Wow.
And first graders,
No,
that's a lot.
no.
It's a lot.
That's-
They're fighting over pencils, and they want to show you, their teeth that just fell out, and
I cannot
they
even
lost a tooth.
believe that 32 first graders in a
In a
classroom
room.
alone.
Yep.
That's terrible. I would.
And that's what we did. Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
No.
I feel like you have to kind of be a natural classroom teacher, disciplinarian, but not so strict that it's terrible. But you have to have control, and it kind of has to come naturally if you're going to have 32 first graders in a room.
Yeah.
I'm just so overwhelmed by that concept.
Right?
I had
Picture it.
10 first graders
Yeah.
alone at one point
We
last
have-
summer at camp, and I was like in fight or flight mode for a week.
We have
I was like, freaking out.
18 juniors in AP literature in the room. Picture 32 first graders.
That's bad.
Well, it's
That's
almost
like,
the same.
no.
18 juniors. Sometimes
Yeah.
we get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
it's
you're
pretty
like
bad.
2 for 1. You can make it a 2-fer.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, do you have any questions for Hattie or?
Yeah, I do. Where do
Okay.
you see yourselves in like the next 5-8 years? What do you want to be doing? What do you think your life is going to take you to?
It's a hard question. I think I would really like to be a pediatrician. So that would put me in med school in 5 or 8 years.
Yeah. You'd be on your way, but not there yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true. I'd be a senior in college in 5 years, but in 8 years, hopefully in med school. I'm not tied absolutely to the idea, because that's just a big thing to say at 17, that I'm going to go to school for like 12 more years. And especially med school. But that's at the top of my list. And so that's
Nice.
hopefully where I'll be, but
Awesome.
more so just strong in my faith and doing whatever the Lord wants me to do.
Right. You never know.
Yeah.
He might turn you a little bit, but that's
Yeah,
a great goal to
absolutely.
have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure yet. There's a lot of things I can go do. I've always been interested in pursuing ministry and going with that. But as I've gotten older, I've been more interested in like starting my own business or something along those lines. Do I know what business that is yet? No. And do I have 2 interests? Yes. But I'm like, I just want to go try a ton of things and see what works.
What are those interests? Do you
It's
mind
just,
saying?
It's just like Mr. Theme, coffee and film.
Okay.
I'm
Oh, really?
super interested
Yeah,
in both of those 2
awesome.
things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe those work, maybe they don't. Maybe I go work for a company for a while and then go start my own thing. I don't know yet.
Maybe those things can amalgamate, and
I
you
know.
can be in
Mhm.
ministry and in a coffee shop, you know?
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
Hebrews coffee.
Nah.
Yeah, right? That'd be
Um,
great.
So yeah,
Okay.
we'll see what the journey looks like soon.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
well, thank you so much for coming on. That was
course.
a wonderful conversation, and we can't wait for part 2 next year. It'll be awesome.
Okay.
It'll be even
Part
better.
2, we go
Yeah.
back to the public school.
Oh,
This
We have
time
more to
we're
talk about.
identifying issues in the private school.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
yeah.
All right.
All right. Deuces.
Deuces.